Fragmentation grenades. The idea of throwing an explosive that scatters fragments predates firearms by centuries. Early Chinese texts from the Ming era described bombs packed with pellets and shards, but the modern hand grenade took shape in the industrial age. The British No. 36 M. Mills bomb of 1915 set the template for a compact casing around a bursting charge, and the U.S. Mk-2 with its distinctive segmented pineapple followed in the Second World War. American practice moved to the M26 Lemon after the war, and then to the spherical M67, designed in the late 1950s and adopted in 1968. The Soviet F-1, derived in part from French concepts, filled a similar role across the Warsaw Pact and lingered in post-Soviet stocks. Nicknames grew alongside the hardware. The M67 is often called the baseball grenade for its size and throwing feel. The Russian F-1 picked up Limonka the Little Lemon. Civilian conversation often calls the fragments shrapnel, though that word properly refers to a specific 19th century shell. With grenades, fragments or splinters is more accurate. A typical M67 weighs roughly 400 grams, uses a composition B charge, and runs an M213 delay on the order of 5 seconds. The casualty radius sits around 15 meters with life-threatening risk much closer, yet energetic fragments can travel far beyond the tactical footprint. The F-1's cast body generates a characteristic pattern, though only a portion forms good fragment pieces. The rest pulverizes into less effective debris. Fragmentation sleeves also exist to convert otherwise low fragment designs into true defensive grenades. The M67 remains in U.S. service with wide export, while F-1 types are still encountered anywhere ex-Soviet materiel moves. Development continues. The U.S. Enhanced Tactical Multi-Purpose Grenade can be configured for fragmentation or concussion, a single body intended to replace separate roles. Concussion grenades. A different problem neutralizing opponents without lethal fragments drove the development of stun grenades in the late Cold War. The US M84 emerged from Picatinny arsenal work in the 1980s and entered service in 1995. It uses a small energetic charge and a vented steel sleeve to produce a short, intense burst of light and pressure. Typical output reaches roughly 170 to 180 decibels at close range and several million candela, enough to degrade vision and balance for vital seconds in a room entry. The casing is engineered to vent rather than fragment, yet the device remains hazardous at close distance and in cluttered interiors. A short-time delay fuse, often the M201A1 with roughly 1 to 2 seconds, supports synchronized team movement. Variants in other countries reached similar goals with different trade-offs. Post-Soviet models such as Zarya 2 and Zarya 3 appear in police and internal security roles. Reports from Armenia in 2024 described injuries consistent with casing fragments, an illustration that design detail governs actual risk. The M84 is standard among U.S. forces and common in special operations units and SWAT teams abroad. Procurement agencies continue to weigh improvements in ignition chemistry and casing geometry to preserve disorientation while cutting the chance of permanent injury. Smoke grenades. Thermite appeared as a metallurgical tool in the 1890s and quickly found military uses. The principle is simple and brutal. A metal oxide and metal powder react exothermically to produce molten metal at extremely high temperature. The U.S. fielded the M9 incendiary grenade during the Second World War. After a designation conflict, the standard settled as ANM-14-TH3. The form is a thin steel cylinder with a pyrotechnic delay. Rather than detonate, it burns downward and pours a jet of molten product onto the target. The composition reaches temperatures around 2000 degrees Celsius, which will eat through thin steel fuse moving parts and render a weapon or engine beyond economical repair. Burn duration sits on the order of half a minute. Thermite has no blast effect to speak of, so placement and contact are everything. The grenade frequently appears in denial tasks, destroying optics, cracking receivers, or melting breech components to keep material from capture. Production of ANM-14 OCI-3 continued through the Cold War, paused in the 2010 and resumed in 2023 at Pine Bluff Arsenal. Specialized variants tailored for maritime special operations also existed. Modern conflicts have added a remote delivery wrinkle. Small drones can drop thermite charges onto vehicles' ammunition stacks or radar equipment without a grenadier closing the distance on foot. White phosphorus grenade. Tier agents entered public security work in the early 20th century with CN, which later gave way to CS in the 1950s. CS proved more effective and persistent. It induces tearing, coughing, chest tightness, and disorientation, then dissipates with air and decontamination. Grenade bodies evolved from simple canisters that could be thrown back to multi-port designs and pellet scattering types that complicate return throws. Training practices integrated CS deeply into military life. Gas mask drills require recruits to don clear and reseal masks under exposure because confidence in the seal matters when seconds count. Field models exist for hand throwing and for launchers ranging from compact riot guns to 37-66mm systems. A continuous discharge grenade typically spreads a couple of ounces of agent over tens of seconds to deny access to a doorway, stairwell, or alleyway. Legal treatment is unusual. Under the Chemical Weapons Convention, tier agents are prohibited for battlefield use, but permitted for domestic law enforcement within strict rules. That separation explains periodic controversy when riot-control agents are used in combat zones, where distinctions between police action and military action blur. Thermobaric grenades. The Mk.3 offensive grenade appeared in 1918 for trench assault, where fragmentation threatened friendly troops at close distance. Early bodies used cardboard or laminated paper, with crimped metal ends deliberately minimizing casing fragments while relying on the pressure wave to neutralize enemies in confined spaces. The line evolved through Mk3, Mk3A1, and the Mk3A2, an asphalt-impregnated fiberboard cylinder filled with TNT and fired by the M206 series fuse. Concussion grenade describes the effect, but demo grenade also entered vernacular because the same characteristics helped in field destruction tasks. Even these blast grenades could create secondary fragmentation if detonated near gravel, glass, or timber. The Mk3A2 weighed just under a pound with a delay around 5 seconds. It served across the U.S. Army and Marine Corps from the Second World War through Korea and Vietnam. The series was withdrawn after 1975 due to safety concerns tied to materials used in the fiberboard, leaving the M67 frag as the general issue lethal hand grenade. Today, blast-only hand grenades survive mostly in specialized military and law enforcement settings, while multi-mode designs under development aim to restore the offensive-defensive switch in a safer package. Stun grenades. The Second World War produced the ANM-8 HC smoke grenade for ground-level obscuration and signaling. HC references the hexachloroethane mixture that reacts to generate dense white smoke. The simple steel body with a pull ring igniter made it convenient for infantry and vehicle crews to mark landing zones, screen a street, or guide fire. The same chemistry created a drawback. Zinc chloride fumes irritate the respiratory tract, so doctrine discouraged use in confined spaces. Training manuals preserved a practical trick. In emergencies, soldiers could open the base light the filler and throw it without the fuse if they needed smoke immediately. The canister runs hot, and it can ignite dry vegetation or trash if used carelessly. Special-purpose variants existed for maritime units. Work at China Lake tailored versions for faster burn and denser plumes to fit Navy needs. By the end of the 20th century, the ANM-8 was declared obsolete in U.S. service. Colored smoke moved to the M18 series, while white obscuration went to the M83, which uses terephthalic acid rather than HC. The M83 burns for a shorter period, but does so with a cleaner plume that better suits modern health standards. Incendiary phosphorus. White phosphorus is pyrophoric. Freshly exposed surfaces ignite in air. Armies adopted it early as a smoke and incendiary agent, and purpose-built grenades appeared during the First World War. Britain's No. 76 phosphorus grenade, American M15 hand grenades, and a wide family of artillery and mortar rounds followed in the next war. The reason for persistence is straightforward. On a per-weight basis, phosphorus produces rapid voluminous smoke and adheres to surfaces while burning very hot. A typical M15 hand grenade used a sheet metal body and a substantial WP filler with a 5-second delay fuse. The bursting radius demanded firm cover for friendly troops. The burning particles were fully capable of inflicting catastrophic injury. Field use covered multiple roles: instantaneous smoke for a street crossing, anti-personnel effects at close range, and marking for artillery or air attack. Tank-launched smoke rounds using WP could also force crews to button up or even bail out if ventilation systems drew in fumes. WP's operational history did not end with the mid-century wars. It appeared in Korea and Vietnam, then in later conflicts in the Falklands, Chechnya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, the Caucasus, and Ukraine. Contemporary Western forces maintain WP in larger munitions, such as 155mm shells. Many armies retired hand-thrown WP grenades and shifted to red phosphorus and plasticized formulations that reduce fire risk while retaining screening utility. Law and policy draw a distinction. White phosphorus is not categorized as a chemical weapon when used for obscuration or marking, but employing it as an anti-personnel incendiary in populated areas intersects with restrictions under Protocol 3 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. That tension explains much of the public controversy when the agent appears near civilians. Riot-control grenades. In 1940, Britain needed a simple anti-tank weapon after the evacuation at Dunkirk. The result was the No. 74 grenade, a hand-placed device with a glass or plastic sphere of adhesive explosive under a removable casing. A spring-loaded striker initiated a short delay. Soldiers pulled the outer shell, pressed the sticky sphere to the target, and retreated before detonation. The concept worked in trials, but proved temperamental in dirty, wet conditions. The adhesive sometimes clung more readily to cloth or webbing than to armor. Nitroglycerin-based fillings also aged poorly in storage. Germany pursued a different close-range route with the Hafthochladung, a shaped charge adhesive hollow charge that used 3 strong magnets to grip armor at the proper standoff and orientation. The shaped charge gave reliable penetration regardless of slope because the magnetic mount held the axis perpendicular to the plate. The trade-off was weight. A typical Hafthochladung weighed several kilograms, which limited the user to an ambush or a quick sprint from cover. Both families demanded suicidal proximity in the age of rapid-fire guns and coaxial machine guns, so they supplemented rather than supplanted emerging rocket systems. Post-war, they faded from inventories as shaped charge rocket launchers improved. The magnetic charge idea survived in naval limpet mines and specialized demolition kits, and the shaped charge principle matured into the modern heat warhead, found in everything from rifle grenades to anti-tank guided missiles. Launcher-only fuel-air grenades. Cold War research into defeating bunkers and caves produced thermobaric and fuel-air concepts. Instead of relying solely on the detonation of a compact explosive, these formulations disperse a fuel cloud and exploit atmospheric oxygen in a sustained afterburn. The result is an intense, longer-duration pressure wave, coupled with heat especially devastating in enclosed spaces where reflections compound the overpressure. Terminology varies. Fuel-air explosive captured early work. Thermobaric emphasizes heat and pressure together. Enhanced blast focuses on extending impulse. Soviet programs created man-portable systems like the RPO-A Shmel. On the American side, large air-delivered bombs such as the BLU-82 became icons of unconventional blast. Infantry-scale warheads also appeared for light anti-armor weapons and specialized launchers. Modern compositions use a high-explosive core, RDX, HMX, or PETN, combined with metal fuels such as aluminum or magnesium. Research now reaches into nanoscale powders and core shell particles to improve ignition and afterburn consistency. Detonation happens in stages. An initial shock disperses the fuel-rich mixture. An anaerobic burn follows in oxygen-poor gases, and an aerobic afterburn consumes atmospheric oxygen, stretching the blast and heat. Some NATO research uses the label Cybex to describe shock-insensitive enhanced blast mixes that trade a little raw performance for safer handling. Operational use appears in Chechnya, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, the Caucasus, and Ukraine. Legal debate persists because blast effects inside buildings and tunnels can be indiscriminate, but these munitions do not fall under the prohibitions that govern chemicals or persistent incendiaries. Anti-grenades. Rifle grenades predate underbarrel launchers by decades. Frederick Martin Hale's 1908 rod grenade fired with a blank established the first practical system, but rod fire stressed rifles, so the First World War shifted to cup dischargers. The French Vivant Bessières design advanced the idea by letting a live round pass through a central channel to light the fuse while gas launched the grenade, giving infantry pocket artillery at squad level. The Second World War made rifle grenades standard kit. Germany paired the Schiesbecker with service rifles. Britain fielded the No. 68 shaped charge anti-tank grenade, and U.S. doctrine-equipped Springfield's Garands and carbines with launchers particularly useful in the Pacific against bunkers, caves, and machine gun nests that hand grenades could not reach. Post-war NATO standardized a 22mm spigot, later joined by bullet-trap, bullet-through types that dispensed with blanks. The category declined with dedicated launchers like the M79 and M203 and the spread of lightweight disposable rockets, but never vanished. Specialized breaching grenades, such as the Israeli Simon, preserve standoff entry capability, and many modern rifles keep 22mm compatible muzzle devices. Current fighting in Ukraine has returned surplus rifle grenade warheads to relevance, repurposed not as muzzle-launched munitions, but as payloads for small unmanned aircraft. Stocks of Polish PGN-60 high-explosive anti-tank grenades, a 68mm fin-stabilized design, developed in the 1950s and introduced in the early 1960s, have appeared with Ukrainian units. Originally paired with the spigot-equipped Karabanek Granatnik Dziebis 1960 and UNM blank cartridges, the concept later gave way in Polish service to the RPG-76 Komar. In Ukraine, PGN-60 bodies are adapted as FPV warheads or harvested for explosive content rather than fired from rifles. Reported penetration runs on the order of 160 to 200mm of rolled homogeneous armor with both impact and graze-sensitive fuses seen in the field. Polish KGN anti-personnel rifle grenades have surfaced alongside them. These use a pre-fragmented sleeve with several hundred pieces and are being mounted to 7-inch FPV frames, sometimes with additional plastic explosive. French stocks have appeared in smaller numbers. A photographed 58mm PAB F2 anti-tank rifle grenade, dated 1990, showed its tail removed consistent with conversion to a drone-delivered charge, a sighting that coincided with transfers of FAMS F1 rifles. The adaptation illustrates why rifle grenades persist at the margins of modern battle, even when their launch systems are obsolete. Compact heat and fragmentation bodies remain useful as modular charges for breaching denial, and now aerial delivery by small teams operating at low cost and high tempo. Give the video a thumbs up, share it with others who appreciate good military weapons history, and subscribe to catch more material in the same vein. Thanks for watching.